This is the Get a Life podcast, Ex-Cult Conversations.
I'm here today with Cheryl, Pam Danylchuk, and Carmen, and we're going to talk more about what it was like to leave today. My Aunt Pam is going to tell us what it was like to leave, and we're just going to have some open conversations about what happens too when you're outside the cult and a family member passes away. What does the church do? Do they allow you near? No, they don't. So let's find out about this. Cheryl?
Hi. Yeah, so we have Pam here with us, and we're very, very grateful that you've joined us today, Pam. Yeah, if you want to kind of just let us know a little bit about your story, like when you left and what kind of provoked you to leave, or if you got kicked out, what was your situation like?
Well, when I decided that I was going to leave, I was at a meeting in Nitchie, and Carmen and I have talked about this, but Mr. Symington, or the MOG at that time, made a lot of fun about my dad, called him geeky and lanky, and made fun of him wearing shorts, riding his bike, because my dad, you know, would ride around, go for drives. I don't know if he's going to see his grandkids or what, but kind of made fun of him a lot there. And right in the meeting, and I thought at that time, you know, that was it for me. I thought, I am not going back. And it was sort of like the icing on the cake.
And so didn't our Admiral have a disease as well? So wasn't he being picked on for a medical condition?
Yes, he actually had acromegaly, which is a tumor on the pituitary gland at the base of his skull. And he actually went to Montreal to have the surgery. But what that does is it makes all your joints and your feet and your hands, your ears, nose, and also his heart and his organs grow. Like his hands were like bear paws. They were huge. So he did look kind of different, right? Not to me, because he was my dad and I saw him all the time, and he was just the loving father that he always was. But, you know, as he was getting bigger and bigger, you know, he did look different. And yeah, Jim Symington just poked fun at him in this meeting. And I remember talking to Carmen about it, and she said she was sitting with her grandma at the time, right, Carmen?
Yep, that's right. Right.
Yeah. And she, I guess, what was your grandma's name?
Beatrice, Trissy, everybody called her.
Yeah. And what did she say? You can fill that part in.
Well, I think I would have been about 10 years old. And I remember sitting there, and anytime he did that, it was like the atmosphere in the whole room was like electric. You know, it just got hot, and you could tell some people were bothered. Some people fed off it, obviously, which is a really sad situation. But I just remember her, she always took notes of the meeting. And I remember when he said that, she put the lid back on her pen, stuck it back on her notebook, and she said, no, Jim, no.
Wow.
And it always stuck with me because they preach so much submission in there that women, I mean, I just grew up thinking that we weren't even supposed to think. And I remember sitting there thinking, you know what? She actually thinks, like, she gets it. This is not good.
Just for the listeners, I want to paint this picture. So these are massive gatherings of church members, right? And the leader, Jim Symington, was considered like Bruce Hales now. He was the top dog. Now you have my great-grandfather sick with a disease that causes his extremities to grow, and the leader of this Christian cult is making fun of him for his medical condition publicly in front of hundreds of people. How Christian.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to paint the picture too, that would have been an interchange meeting. It would be 4 complete localities there. And I think when we all got together, it would have been somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 people. And would that be right?
I
I mean, the room was full, and it felt really hot. And I mean, it was just wrong. I mean, even as a 10-year-old, I just remember feeling like, oh, I just want to get out of here. You know, I mean, it was awful.
So uncomfortable. And like you could hear a pin drop.
Yeah.
You know?
And was anything ever said after the fact? Like, was it ever addressed? Was it brought up? Did anybody apologize for it?
Never.
And how did your mother take that?
Well, you know, I never talked to my mom about it until years later. And I said to her, it was after I had been out for years, and she, you know, it's when they all came back to try to get us to come. They came to visit to try to get us to come back to the church. Like that was about 15 years ago.
Yeah, when the review was happening.
Yeah. And I told this to my mom, and she says, oh, I know. She said, Dad was so upset. He just, but she says, he just accepted it. That was, you know, that was what was given to him. And I said, but Mom, that's not right. You know, they were just so like the man of God, and, you know, Mr. Symington, he knows best. And I said, well, I said that I couldn't live with that. I said, that's wrong. It's not right.
How old were you when that happened?
I left when I was 22, 23.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's like 40. I'm 66. So 43 years ago.
Wow. And so what led up to you wanting to leave, and what like kind of pushed you across that line? Like, that's too much, I'm done.
It was that meeting. And I went home, and then I started, you know, when we have an interchange, I'd say, oh, I don't feel good, not going to go. And I just started kind of backing away from that. And then that's how I did it. I went out with a bunch of friends that I knew from work, and got in major trouble for it, and was accused of a whole bunch of things that I didn't do. And I was shut up, as they call it. And they left me for over 9 months without coming to visit me.
Wow.
Like the priest. So I was like 9 months living in my parents' home. You know,
probably couldn't eat with them, right?
No, couldn't eat with them. Could hardly talk to them. I was going to work and stuff. I had to tell them everywhere I was going, if I was going shopping after work or anything. So that was fine. I had nothing to hide. And all that time, I really wanted to get back in. Yeah. I don't know why, but I guess I got, you get scared. You're scared. So, so they left me for 9 months, and I started thinking about, this is ridiculous. And I said to my mom and dad, I said, look, you're sitting in the kitchen eating dinner, and I'm sitting in the living room. I says, I don't care what they say. I'm coming and eating with you. And I just walked in there, sat down, and my dad just had this smile on his face. You know, Lane, how he had that great smile. I said, I don't care. I'm eating with you. Stupid. Right. So then the priests that visited me they were disgusting. I was young. I was naive. The questions they asked me, they just wanted me to admit that I had sex or fornication or whatever they want to call it. And I just, nope, didn't happen. So, but these two men are just like wanting all this. It was disgusting. And, I look back on it now and think that's abuse.
It is.
Yeah.
It is 100%.
It was disgusting what they were trying to make me commit to or admit to. And then at the same time, I heard after that one of them was having an affair with his secretary at work.
Oh, for Christ's sake.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm going like, what? You're kidding me,
Mm-hmm.
But it was, sorry, Lee, go ahead.
These priestly visits, just so the listeners know, like, they really are disgusting, especially when you're a young person and you have someone asking you disgusting questions. I remember one time the priests asking me, because I got caught making out with this girl, and I was 17 at the time. And the priest asked me, who undressed who first? Where did you touch her? That's fucking disgusting. He was a perv.
They are pervs. They really are.
Yeah.
They
So,
really
so you left. So you get confined. Now, the review comes. They try and come and get you back, which blows my mind after everything they did to you. Can you also tell us the story you mentioned briefly on the phone about your daughter and about how when she was born?
Yeah, so I got kicked out. That was fine. We started making a new life, and just to kind of go back to that, I worked at a doctor's office, and my mom would always walk down the street because it was close to our house. My mom would always walk down the street to see me, to see if she could see me when I'm coming out for lunch, to go for lunch. And, she's standing across the street. It's heartbreaking. And I've got to go back to work and try to function properly, and do my job. And it was lucky I worked for a great clinic. Dr. Ross was my boss, and he knew all about the brethren. He actually diagnosed my dad before anyone else had, only by seeing him. My dad used to come pick me up from work to make sure I wasn't drinking or something, or having a party at work.
Yeah.
But he told me after, he says, I knew your dad had that acromegaly. So it was kind of interesting. But yeah, Dr. Ross was really good to me, him and his wife, and made me realize that there are a lot more Christians in the world than the brethren like you to believe, right?
Yeah. So
he was really good. They were great helping me. And then I married Bruce. I'd grown up with him throughout the years. Like when we were like 10 years old, we were neighbors. So we ended up getting married, had kids, and I was in the hospital, and I just had Olivia. And anyways, I was laying there, and I guess my back was kind of to the door, and I was rocking her, and I heard this noise, and I kind of turned around, and there was no one there. I thought it was a nurse coming in. So anyways, a little bit later, the nurse came in and said to me, "Oh, did you enjoy your visit with your mom?" And I said, "My mom wasn't here." I said, "My mom wasn't here." She said, "Oh, yeah, she was." And I was so tired, just had this baby, and I wasn't thinking about my mom being there, right? And when they came back, like 20 years later, to see if we would go back to the church, she told me, she says, "I always felt really bad. I came to see you in the hospital." And I said, "Was that you?"
Oh,
That's heart-wrenching.
I said, "Why did you come in?" She said, "I was too afraid. I was just too afraid." I guess there was another brethren in the church, in the hospital at the time, and she'd gone to see her, and then never came in. Isn't that sad?
Like think of the reality of what you just said. Like was this your first child?
Yeah.
Your first child, and your mom is too afraid to come and see you.
Yeah.
And I know you're a grandmother now. Can you imagine not going and seeing your grandchildren? Like, how could you do that? How could you choose fear over love?
Yeah. I know when Madeline, my youngest son's first daughter was born, I stayed there all night.
Yeah.
We were, could have almost been in the delivery room. I was not leaving. I couldn't imagine turning against my kids and my grandkids. They're my life. They're just so special. How do you do that? I honestly don't know how they could do it and believe that is right.
It must break their hearts as well. And it's so unnatural that it blows my mind. Like, yeah. And tell us too, my great grandma, when your mother passed away, how callous they were.
Yeah. Yeah. When my mom passed away, my son had surgery, and I really wanted to go down and see her. And where was she, in Baltimore or something, or Washington?
Outside Washington, D.C. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really wanted to go and see her, but my son had just had surgery, and I thought, I just can't leave, right? I kind of had to look after him, even though he was an adult, but he still needed to be looked after. But anyways, then when she passed away, they did call me. David called, like your grandpa, Lane.
Yep.
I always get mixed up, I think, because I forget Lane is my great nephew, right?
Yes.
Like his dad is my nephew.
That's
I always
correct.
think it's his grandpa again. But anyways, yeah, they did call me and then tell me, but they bury them the very next day, so nobody has time to go.
Nope. They do that. They do that on purpose. You know, I heard another case in Toronto not that long ago, where the father died and he had two sons out, and they lied about the time of the funeral so that they couldn't get there. Like, it's just disgusting. They won't come in to see their grandchildren. They don't allow them to come to their own family's funeral. And yet they call themselves a mainstream Christian church, you know, and we don't break up families. Really? Every one of us on this podcast today has had our families ripped apart.
Yeah.
But we're stronger for it, right? Like, I want to make sure that even listeners realize that, like, and especially ex-members, right? Like, every one of us did something that the rest of our families didn't have the strength to do.
Yeah.
And they're stuck in that fear, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's incredible. So no invitation to the funeral. Any kind words? Do they contact you at all still?
No.
Nothing.
No. Sometimes I'll send my sister Betty and my sister Margaret, I'll always send them an email on their birthdays. And I always get a reply, you know, thank you, and how are you doing? And that's about it.
Okay.
I used to phone them, but you know, sometimes you just don't. I hate the thought of being rejected all the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, it's just so hard to,
And
you know, it's easier not to do it, then you don't have to worry about it, right?
exactly. And have you noticed that even when you can speak to them briefly here and there, they absolutely give zero information? Like,
Yeah.
when I was speaking to my father, one of the few times in the last 10 years, I think I've only spoken to him twice on the phone. And one time I was asking him and I said, so how are you guys doing? It was during the pandemic. And he said, okay, Lane, thanks. We got to go. Bye. Right? They won't give you any information on how they're doing. And it's like, oh, you sad, sad people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But let's go on to some news, some stuff that's recently happened in the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. We have some amazing news. Scott Hales has left the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church with another female from the church. We don't know who yet. We're going to try and confirm who this is, but I think this is amazing to have a Hales leave. I mean, now they're going to know what it's like.
Yeah. That's amazing.
You know,
And-
sometimes that's how they learn, right? Is to have one of their own leave. You know, it was when Morse Hope had, who was one of my main priestly visit, the cancer of Maple Creek, when I had heard that one of his sons had left, I was like, you know what? He needed to be able to experience what my family went through and what other families go through. That's how they learn.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried being nothing but loving to my family. I mean, for 14 years, I've tried to communicate with them with letters, emails, phone calls, happy birthdays, even birthday gifts, you know. And then all of a sudden, you know, going through therapy and talking to my therapist, all of a sudden it's like, why though? Right? Why am I focusing on this family that's rejected me when I can focus on the family that I do have, right? Like my Auntie Pam and my girlfriend and all the people around me that are real family, right? And so then I kind of all of a sudden started looking at that, like family isn't everything, especially not blood family, right? It's who you make it and who actually shows loving kindness. And that isn't always family, or not immediate family anyway, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes friends are more family than family, right?
Exactly.
You know, they care about you, and they certainly don't do the things that our families did to us.
No.
Just totally rejecting us.
And I think, though, that when you really dissect it, the Plymouth Brethren are acting out of fear, right? Fear is at the basis of a lot of hatred. I mean, I even go so far as to say that Hitler was terrified of the Jews. That's why he hated them, because he was scared that they would change his way of what he thought life should be like. So Bruce Hales, I'm not comparing them to Hitler, but what I'm saying is that they, how do I word this? They're so terrified of the world that they decide to hate it, right? They're terrified that the world is evil and that these people in the world are evil. And we leave, and what do we find? That they're loving, compassionate, more caring people in the world than there are in the Brethren.
Although I don't think Bruce Hales believes that. I don't think Bruce Hales is afraid of the outside world.
No, maybe
I don't.
Not him.
He just makes his believers believe that, because I mean, he has too much to do in the business world to be afraid of the world. I believe he just feeds that fear down the line to keep people in line, right? Like yeah.
I'll agree with you, but then I would say that he is still scared of something, and I would say that is exposure and us.
Yes.
He is scared
Yes.
of what we have to say, because these stories are true and they're painful. And we're going to keep talking about them, because the more we expose, hopefully, at least one person maybe will choose to leave, or be like, you know what? I know that this person committed a crime, and I'm going to tell the police. Right.
I think there's a point there too. I think that's why they keep women so quiet, and they, step on them, and they spend so much time preaching submission, is because they're scared. They don't want to hear a woman's point of view.
The vast majority of victims in the Plymouth Brethren would probably be women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go ahead, Pam.
Well, I was just going to say they're afraid of women, because I think well, not for you, Lane, but I think we're smarter than them.
You are. No, you are. You guys definitely are.
I mean, society.
Yeah.
Because society has that. Yeah.
Yeah. And women have the compassion and the caring, along with the fire.
How many cults do you see run by women?
Yeah, never.
It's true. Yeah.
Right?
Was it the same? Probably it was even worse back, when you were going through it too. Their hatred of women.
Oh yeah. You cooked and cleaned and had babies, and you had no say. You did what they were told, and that was, I couldn't imagine that. I couldn't imagine living in that now.
It's like being stifled, like every woman in there has a gag on. And it's awful. It's awful. They make them, even now when they do their Zoom church meetings, right? So they do them by Zoom. Even in the living room where they have the camera and they have to sit in front of their big TV and everyone can see everyone, the men have to sit in front of the women. How fucking misogynistic is that?
Yeah.
So they have TVs now?
Yeah, they do.
Yes,
for specific reasons, though, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah. So the rumor is that some watch Netflix, some don't. Most watch documentaries. All their internet, though, is monitored
through Streamline.
Through Streamline 3.
Yeah.
So everything that they can have music now, but they have their own music app called Trove, and it's absolutely atrocious. And it's all Plymouth Brethren music. So if you want to stab your ears with a fork, I mean, you could try it, but it's absolutely terrible. They're making up their own music apps. They're making up their own grocery stores. And it's, what a joke. What a fucking joke.
I do think, though, Bruce is smart with how he's done this, because he's taken what is out in the world, right? And he's tried to give them duplicates of it, brethren wise, so that, you know, you can kind of keep, we were on James D. Fiore podcast yesterday, and I said, it's like he built them a candy store filled with all this candy, and then he locked the door. And the kids, people don't realize that they're inside this candy shop and locked in it, right? Like he's given them everything that our generations we never had, right? And now this generation, they have it. And they kind of have, like, when I was being told, well, you know, you should come back, Cheryl, it's very different. It's completely different. It's completely changed. I was like, but it hasn't changed. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the candy changed. You just handed out candy, but nothing has changed. You're now just being kept quiet so that they can run what they need to run over top of it. And so that when you come out with the stuff that we're coming out with, the people inside, they're like, yeah, that's not true. It's just lies. It's just, this isn't real. This isn't true, because they don't see it. They're busy sucking on their candies and all this freedom that they think that they have. And it's not true freedom. One of the things, Pam, I wanted to ask you is, because I know you have children, like, what is one of the biggest things that you made sure to change or to really reiterate in your children growing up that you never got? Like, what was a big pivotal thing that you made sure your children knew growing up?
I think that I would always be there for them.
Yeah.
I was never going to ditch them. And you know, I think that would be the main thing. You know, you stand by them, you help them. You know, we have 3 kids. We had normal life, problems, great things, bad things, right? And I just always wanted to stand by my kids and tell them they were loved. They would always be loved, and we'd help them through stuff. And I'm not going to leave them. I'm not going to desert them.
Yeah. Because
they did something that I didn't like, right? And they sure have done that.
And would you say, Carmen, too, like that is one of the biggest things us mothers really took out of this? I mean, you have 7 children, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you think that that's one of the biggest things that we've taken away from our grief of what we went through?
And I think too, when you think of day-to-day life, I let my kids, if they wanted to do something, we would let them talk about it, bring it up. Nothing was hardcore a no. So if they wanted to do something, they knew we probably wouldn't like it. We would there was always open conversation about everything. So we would say our point of why we would rather if they didn't do it, and they would say why they wanted to do it. And then everything is open for discussion. And I think inside there, as a kid growing up, there's certain things that you didn't even talk about because you just knew that would just like pop a fire cap. I think that's one of the things I changed.
And do you find you both do it for your grandchildren too? Like, it's even reiterated more within the grandchildren?
No, for sure.
Yeah, they get away with everything.
I know.
They just say please, and I'm like, oh yes, of course.
Yeah, can you do this? You bet you I can do that. I do this? Yes, you can. To a degree.
And I'll even help you. And I might even buy it for you too.
My granddaughter, she's 4, Madeline, and she really hates going to preschool, right? And so one day Monica asked me, she said, can you come over? Carrington's sick and I can't get Madeline to school, and we live really close. So I said, oh, sure, I'll come and take her to school. So I get there and it was like, I said, Madeline, do you want to just come to Grandma's house?
Yep. Guilty.
Yeah. I had asked Monica before. I said, do you mind should I just take her home for a little while and maybe, anyway, so Madeline or Monica came and picked her up at lunchtime and took her to school, but you come to Grandma's house for a while and calm down.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I'm thinking, what's the big deal, right?
Yep.
She's 4 years old. She's not gonna miss out on really anything if she doesn't go to school one day and comes to Grandma's house. She was so perfect that day. And she's always perfect though.
Pam, did your children growing up, like, did they ever question, like, how did you explain to them about your parents and where they were and why they were absent in their life?
I did explain it to them. And yeah, I told them it was their, it was the church, and that we, they have their beliefs, and they just kind of accepted it. It was almost like they grew up without them, so they didn't really, question a lot. And then one day we were shopping at Polo Park, and I saw my mom and dad, and I walked by and I thought, no, I am going back. So I turned around, went back, and I said hi to my mom and dad. They were sitting in the middle of the mall, right? And so, and they were sweet. Like, they talked to me, and, we're praying for you, Pamela. And I get it. So anyways, after that, the kids would always say, let's go to Polo Park and see grandma and grandpa. They thought they lived at Polo Park.
And see, like,
it's so heart-wrenching.
It is heart-wrenching.
And I think that's the biggest thing, like for mine, like, I have 3 children. It was my daughter who had the hardest time with it, seeing her friends have grandparents and people around us that had grandparents, right? And I think that was the hardest thing for her to ever digest, is she just wanted grandparents so bad. And it's just, I think there's always a part of grief that we have, and we're always biting it off and chewing it, because there's a lot of grief there for the situations and being separated. But I think that's the biggest piece of grief that I always have to chew off in small chunks and process, is that my children never got to experience that close connection of grandparents. And I think grandparents are such an important part of your life. They're just so important. It's just one of those things. They got
so much freedom, you know what I mean? Like, it's a sacrifice for sure. There's always sacrifices, right? But those choices aren't easy, especially like mothers. I can't imagine, but at the same time, what you've done for your children is so immense. Like, you literally gave them a completely new life that no one before you, you know what I mean, your siblings and everything, didn't have. And they couldn't. They didn't have the strength to do it. So it's pretty amazing what each one of you has done for your children.
Yeah. So this is a good question that we like to ask people. So what do you think is the biggest error in the PBC doctrine, Pam?
I think it's that they've closed their doors to everybody. Yeah, I said to my mom, I was talking to my mom one day, and I said, Mom, if you just would open your doors to the world, maybe you would convert all these sinners.
That's a great point.
Good one.
She couldn't get it. She, she was older too, probably in her 80s at that time. But I said, if everyone is so bad, why don't you open the doors and preach them the gospel, so maybe you would convert them all.
Yeah.
It's hard that they don't see the hypocrisy, right?
Yeah.
Of the Christian world that they live in. And yet it's so hypocritical of their beliefs, right? It's just, everything is just, they just don't see the hypocrisy that they're living under.
They see themselves as different, right? Yeah. But what you've got to break it down to these people, and I hope there's some Brethren members listening, is you need to understand, if you're a Brethren member right now, that if you are put into a room with another human being that does not speak your language, that's a different race, a different culture and everything, if you're handed food, you'll both know what to do with it. If you're handed a mattress, you'll both know what to do. Handed water, you'll both know what to do. So that means that for life, those two people in this imaginary thought game didn't need their fucking religion, but didn't need it to survive. So my personal, again, it's just my personal opinion of the worst doctrine of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church would be the fact of Christianity altogether. Now, again, that's just my opinion. Personally, if there is a creator, I do not think that the creator has a favorite type of elephant. I don't think he has a favorite type of zebra. So I don't think that anything a human can do can be unhuman. So the galaxy, the universe as far as they've measured, is infinite. So if there's infinite planets, stars, and possibilities, the idea that the creator has one favorite planet and one special type of human sapiens, Homo sapiens, right? It just doesn't make, that logic just doesn't add up for me. Why would you have a favorite?
And most, I mean, you get into the most hardcore religious sects, right? Jehovah Witnesses, and I mean, even Mormons, right? Like you get into this thing where everybody thinks that they all have their own special place because of what they believe underneath their roof, right? And I do, and I agree that that is probably the biggest downfall of these Christian religions is they get lost in how they interpret everything, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
they all think they're special. They all think that they have something, right? The Mormons have the Book of Mormon. The Plymouth Brethren have Bruce Hale's ministry, right? The Seventh-day Adventists have their own thing. Jehovah Witnesses have their Book of Jehovah or wherever. They all have their secret little thing that is going to get them into this amazing super VIP special spot, right? There is no VIP section. Anyway, that's my rant.
no, and it's valid. It's very valid. Yeah.
That's truly.
I just feel like if there is a creator, that something that could make something so magnificent as the mountains, waterfalls, you just take 10 minutes and look at grass and watch insects, and you're like, this is incredible. This is absolutely beautiful. It's amazing. And there's definitely, I'm just a little speck, and I highly doubt that my actions are going to get me sent to an eternal torture chamber, right? Like, let's remember that that's the basis of what this Christian cult says, right? If you fuck up the rules, although you're born into this video game that they tell you you have to follow this one book of rules, and if you fuck up, you're going to get tortured for eternity. Tortured for eternity if you fuck up these rules. I didn't even want to play this game. Like, it's just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is almost like what wars are all about, correct?
100%.
Yes.
This is what happens. You get all these different beliefs and everybody thinks their belief is the best. And it's just like, I think over this last weekend, I've just been in a tumultuous place of the fixer in me just wants to go and fix. I just want to find a way to fix this. And it's not easy, but I do believe that having people like you come on, Pam, and tell your story and kind of join in our conversation, it kind of spreads the word that, let's go on, let's have these conversations, because I do think it starts with us owning our voice and knowing that we have a voice that makes us stand up and be like, hey, this isn't right. Like if you had a chance, Pam, to go back, walk into the church and you were given a platform that Pam gets to say whatever she wants to say and it's listened to and addressed, what would your message be to them? What would you say to them?
I want to hear.
You don't want to know.
I do want to know. I do want to know. And you know what? You give it to us straight, because you know what you say allows other people to be like, you know what? I was thinking that too. That's what I would like to say. So yeah, we can take it.
Oh, I know you can. It's everybody else. Oh man, I think I would just say you guys are so pathetic. You don't even know what real life is all about.
Yeah.
And you're all sitting there thinking you are so holy and mighty, high and mighty, and you're all a bunch of fucking idiots.
Yeah.
There.
Love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. Right.
Come
Like
on. It's like, get a life. It's just like the podcast. Get a life. Like, come on. How can you see this? How can you stay in there and think that is right? And it's not just like you say, their doctrine. It's like the way they're treating people and families and letting things go. Cheryl, like in your case, and Lane and many, like, and that's okay. I want to shake them. I just want to shake them and say, come on.
What I would say to them, I'd ask them this simple question. Why are you guys not the happiest people in the world?
Yeah.
You should be. You're the one true church. You should be happier than everybody, but they're not. They're miserable. And they come to you and you guys can all attest to this. When they talk to you after you leave at priestly visits, they're like, oh, just appeal to you, please. We're praying for you. And they're just this miserable, and you're like, I gotta go, like I'm going to the bar with my friends. I'm gonna go have some fun. I'm gonna play a video game. I'm gonna eat sushi that you guys don't even know what it is. I'm gonna try Indian food. And you realize that they're fucking miserable with all their money and everything they have. They can't enjoy it. They're fucking miserable. So I would give them all the finger and I'd be like, y'all fucking suck.
Right.
What would you say, Carmen?
Oh no, I was just thinking, did you ever go to church after you left, Pam?
I did try to go to church. Yeah. I went to the Baptist church.
Uh-huh.
And it was interesting because my husband was not, there is no way he was coming. So I thought, okay, go take the kids. I think I just had, maybe I had all three of them at that time. I can't remember. But so I go to this one service and I knew people there. So anyways, I take the baby. I think it was John. I take the baby into the service with me, and he was like a newborn. So he was quiet, right?
Yeah.
Just sleeping. And they came up and they said, there's a nursery for your baby. And I said, yeah, I know. And so as I sat there and the girl sitting beside me, she just said, you don't need to take the baby to the nursery. I said, I'm not going to. So anyways, they came up about 4 times and said, well, you have to take the baby to the nursery or you can't be here.
Really?
Oh my.
Wow.
So I got up, I walked out, and of course they're all looking. And then I think someone phoned me after and I said, well, if it's not good enough for my baby, then it's not good enough for me. I don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
So that was it. I think I kind of got my little fix, thinking, am I really missing something? Right? Am I missing something? Not being, even though I didn't want to go back to the church, but am I missing something? Should I do this for my kids? Should be a good Christian, And I thought, no, that was it for me. And I never did go back.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, and I never will. I think, being Christian, you have your own relationship with God, and that was it. That's how I feel and how I live my life.
Yeah.
So
wow.
But it was like, oh, again? I thought churches, they're all the same. They're all the same.
They are.
Yeah.
They like
Leave it.
Soon as you have to tell me how I can love someone else and rules that I gotta follow to express love.
Yeah. Why? And it's funny, I know we're not talking about the pandemic here, but when the government comes out and tells you have to do something.
Yep.
I think that freaked me out. And I says, I am not doing it. And I honestly do relate it to the church for me.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I respect people that have, if you have or you don't or whatever. But when that came out, I think the hair in the back of my neck went up and I thought, that's it. I'm like, forget it. You're not telling me what to do. And I think it all came back to the church. And I just kind of had like a little PTSD moment there. And I thought, this is just like them telling you what you have to do.
Yep.
I'm not doing that. So
speaking of PTSD quick too, that's something I wanted to mention is, let's remember first, let's take an example. So if you took people that left, let's say the Catholic Church, and if 90% of the people that gave up the Catholic faith had PTSD, would there not be a fucking problem? Like, the vast majority of ex-members of the church have some form of PTSD.
100%, yes.
Sure.
And it's the fact that we got it from this church, you know what I mean, should speak volumes. I mean, if people are leaving an organization and getting post-traumatic stress disorder from being in there, that warrants a massive investigation.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely, I can understand what you're saying about like getting triggered with getting told what to do. I I had a similar instance after one of the first podcasts I did. I had someone message me and tell me to connect them with someone else. And they didn't ask, they just, you need to do this. And I just fucking lost it. I can't take that. Like, you're not going to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Unless you're in my chain of command and you're my boss.
Yeah. And I do think that's one of the gifts that we get, though, is this little bit of rebellion. But that rebellion makes you really listen to what's out there, right? It's not, we just don't go and just follow the flock, right? It's about you create your own mind, and you allow that mind to have its own mechanism that says, hey, is this right for me or is this not right for me? But the first thing that hits you, though, is this, I'm not doing it. And I'm the same way. As if anybody tells me to go and do something, or I have to do something, I'm like, yeah, no, I don't have to do that. It was the same thing when they wanted me to do the police statement. I was like, I'm not doing a fucking police statement. Just because you told me I have to do it, I'm not doing it. And I mean, I think it's good for us to slow down and have that rebellion in us to slow us down, to be like, hey, because we're always reprogramming our brain because of what we went through, right? I think that piece of rebellion is a little bit of a break for us. And it's good that we have it, because it makes us just second guess and be like, hey, is this right? Is this really what I want? And I think that's the biggest thing that's taken away in the cult, right? You have no reason, no way of thinking. You do not know how to think for yourself. When I left the church, the first thing I took up was drinking and smoking, right? It was the only way I knew how to relate to the outside world, was vodka and orange juice in the morning. And I was able to go and meet the world, because you don't have a way, right? And you get yourself in all these precarious situations because we don't know what to expect, right? And I do agree. I agree. Like, one of the biggest things that they need to be held accountable for is the mental health of those that have left, and also the people that are in there, but those that have left us, that the mental health of every single one of us that have left. I mean, I'm hoping we can get everybody on here, and everybody's going to say the same thing, that everybody does have a form of PTSD from being in there. Like, did you find, like, Pam, when you hear the stories of the generations that are leaving now, do you find much difference between when you left and these other generations that are leaving? Is there a difference that you find?
Well, I really haven't heard a lot about people leaving now. I think the last one I really knew about was Lane. And how long ago was that, Lane? 14 years ago, you said?
Yep, 14 years. And just so the listeners know, my Auntie Pam here helped me a tremendous amount leaving. Like, we've had some great times together, and definitely, like, it helped so much having someone, right? Having family that you can rely on, that's there. Like, because there are times, I speak for myself, but when you feel completely alone, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes for myself, I was a bachelor for a long time, and holidays were always hard for me, right? Sometimes being in the military, I couldn't always come or go somewhere for Christmas, or I wouldn't know what to do for Thanksgiving. And I've had strangers and friends take me in, and of course I've gone to my Auntie Pam's, but it does suck sometimes when you really
when you're alone. It does. It's nice to be able to have, like, for me, it was so great meeting you, Lane, and how it happened was my son John was in Montreal going to university, and Lane, of course, at that time lived there. And we met up, and it was just so cool. Me and
John had so much fun. He was a couple years older than me, and I was obviously still in the church, and I must have been about 15, I think, or 16. I think I was about 15, and I would sneak downtown on the train. And I even played hooky from school sometimes, and I'd go and meet John because he was at McGill University, and I'd get to hang out with this university kids, and John would take me to frosh parties, and
I don't want to know everything.
No, comparatively, we were very good kids, but I had so much fun, and I think part of that also sealed the deal for me. I was like, oh my goodness, this is this is what life's like, right? Like hanging out and going to parties and doing all this fun stuff that normal, teenage boys and girls should be doing.
Yeah.
That helped me immensely,
Yeah. Me too. It was great to know that I knew that if you needed help, I would be there for you, and it's nice to have some family, right?
And it does, it's so heartwarming. Like I recently had a childhood friend leave, and me and this childhood friend were very close, and it warms your heart, because for 14 years, 15 years, I haven't heard a word, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, another one left, It's so rewarding when you hear about someone leaving the cult.
Yeah. Turn this light on.
I think what's amazing too is when we all get talking to each other, it's like there was never a breakdown. I mean, we can all just pick up the conversation.
Yeah, it's like no time is left.
Conversation helps. Talking about this stuff helps, right? These conversations, these podcasts help. We're getting our listeners really into our lives and the suffering that we went through, but also the strength that we have now, right? And we're showing those listeners, maybe there's some young people listening right now that are like, wow, these people made it. Why are they not angry? They're not angry. They're not sad. They're happy, you know, and that's what we're going to show, right? That doesn't mean that life is just perfect and roses on the outside of the cult. No, it's reality and it's real and it's raw, but there's so much more happiness.
Yeah,
so
the
much
choice.
More choice.
Yeah. And that's the key, is when you learn that you have choice, then all of a sudden your brain gets engaged. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, who am I? Right? Who am I outside of everything that was put on me? And that's the most rewarding part of this, is like every day being able to wake up and find a new piece of yourself that had been suffocated or covered up, right? Like and I mean, 30 years of being out, I still am finding those pieces of myself. And it's so rewarding to know that you have choice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Before a wrap up, I always want to call out some names of some bad people. So I'm going to call out names of 3 priests in Montreal that took my story of sexual abuse and then decided to do nothing with it. And they are Randy Cowie, Derek Cowie, and Johnny Fossey. So these 3 individuals, I told them all about how I was sexually abused, and they did nothing. They never spoke to me about it again. So that's why I just want to call out names of bad people.
Yeah, it's good to expose it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You were going to say something, Pam.
I was going to say that if there's anyone in Winnipeg, especially in Winnipeg, because I live here, and you need someone to talk to, or you need to come over, or you need to talk, I'm here for you. Like,
I love that.
I'll definitely be here.
Yeah,
that's great.
And I think that's important for everybody to know, right? Like, just with the people that I've been communicating with, is that I had a good conversation yesterday with somebody that's in, and it was such a message that I was trying to convey, is that there's hundreds of people out here that would take anybody in a heartbeat, right? And help them and be able to let you see the possibilities that you are outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's lots of them.
Everybody's so relatable. It's what I enjoy about these conversations, is that we all have experienced the same thing. And so you can kind of sit in this little blanket of like, I don't have to explain what I'm feeling to any of you, because I know you're already feeling it. You've felt it. You've gone through everything that I've gone through, right? No matter what our stories is. And I think that's the biggest thing I'd like to express, is that I always get people like, oh, well, my story wasn't like your story. And I'm like, that's not the point. It doesn't matter what your story is. We all end up in the same pool of trauma in there. We do. It doesn't matter what path took you there. I mean, somebody could have been just groped by an elder and done the exact same amount of emotional trauma that what I went through, right? I think that's the biggest thing, is that in there you need to realize is that it's all of our stories take us to feeling the same way. And just don't compare each other's stories. It's more about supporting each other in that same pool of trauma that we've all been through. And there's tons of people out here that are willing and ready, like Pam is saying, in Winnipeg, ready to help you or listen to you, lend an ear. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, Cheryl, when you said that, because I thought that as well about you. I thought, oh man, like that, your story is just like unbelievable. I cried, sat and cried when I listened to your podcast, and shocked, totally shocked. And then I thought, it brought back the feelings of when I was sexually assaulted by someone that was in the church. He's no longer in the church, but I thought, well, that was nothing compared to what you went through. But then I heard you say that on a podcast. I thought, okay, you're right, because we all went through things. Yeah. It was ignored. Nothing was done about it. Yeah. How did it affect me? I don't really know how it affected me, but it has affected me in ways that maybe I don't even think about right now. Yeah. But I am a fierce protector of my girls in my family. I have my daughter, 2 daughter-in-laws, 2 great granddaughters, and also my little beautiful grandson. But I'm a fierce protector of them. Like, I don't let my sons, I'm like, shit, I don't let nothing happen to them, because I think I just like so protective, because I thought I don't know what I would do if somebody did anything to them that would happen to me. And then I love my mother. I know my mother saw it, and I know my oldest brother saw it, and nothing was done. But,
that's awful.
It is hard. Yeah.
Trauma's not comparable, right? Like, you can't compare traumas because,
trauma's trauma.
Exactly. It's like all the same grief. It's all the same shame. It's all the same guilt. It's all the same.
Shame. Shame
is just huge. Oh, it's huge. Yeah. And you know what? I have people, okay, so I get things inside of like, oh, you know what, Cheryl, watch your podcast, people inside are like, it's just all lies. And, it's like, I don't even care that people don't believe my story, because I'm the one that has to deal with opening up that can of worms inside me every day. So I don't give a shit if you don't believe me. I wish I didn't have to believe me. I wish I could have a break from it. I would love to have a fucking break from it for just 24 hours. And so it doesn't bother me when people say that they don't believe me, because I completely understand. I get it. I get why you don't want to, and that's okay. The thing is that the shame that comes with exposing sexual trauma and sexual abuse is horrific. It's so hard to get through. The only thing that I can say that has helped me battle shame is by understanding where that shame comes from, because shame comes from when the actual trauma itself has happened with the perpetrator. And in my case, Ellen was very, anybody you talk to that has had incidences with Ellen all have the same thing. He just owned you. He just had this feeling. He was just very bold with it. And when things didn't go right, or if you did something wrong, gosh, the shame is just the shame that you feel from what happens inside that trauma engulfs you. It just engulfs you. I think the biggest problem that, if I had a chance to say something to the brethren, would be their lack of sexual education. And I think one of the biggest problems inside there is the way that it is a taboo subject. It is not talked about. These women are just submissive in this relationship. I think if they really wanted to tackle the pedophiles inside there and the sexual abuse that goes on inside there, they have to start teaching sexual education of some sort. Because we were hearing just Lane yesterday on James D. Fiore podcast about the sexual castration that had just recently happened because of masturbation. Like, if they don't honor the body's natural, organic, physical response through puberty and maturing and all that kind of stuff, this is what you end up with. You end up with a backlog of all of these people that are in behind the door sexually abusing submissive women, because nobody's been taught how to handle their bodies. And it is one of the, I think it's one of the biggest issues they have in order to be able to kind of clean up this mess. But I mean, that's a huge task. How can you introduce to the PBCC, like, hey, you need to do sexual education. You need to allow these people to masturbate, and so that they are leaving other people alone. I mean, I get Ellen is a very sick man. I think he's not just your typical person who's wasn't able to masturbate and ended up, he's not like that. He is a very complex case of pedophilia. But for those cases that if these young men are just taught how to honor their body, the women are giving some sort of guidance on what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, instead of everything happening behind closed doors. I'm going to tell you something that somebody told me. I haven't revealed this publicly, and I'm not going to, I know we got to wrap this up soon, but I'm not going to give names, but I had someone come to me and say that they witnessed me or my sister being taken into a bathroom with young teenage boys at the time, young men, and coming out and bragging what they did. And this person didn't know if it was me or if it was my sister. And like, that's how it fucking starts. And I'm like, it's just, I guess when we get into all the heat of this stuff, for me, I'm always looking at, this isn't about gossip. This isn't about collecting people's stories to sit here and talk about it. This is about put the shit on the table and let's find out, what can we do with this? Like, what is in our power to, as collective, gathering enough people together, how can we change this? What kind of movement can we make that actually produces some sort of safety for those kids that are still inside there? And I said that to the police in one of my last letters. I said to them, like, what can we do? What can I do? What can you do? Like, let's do something. I just can't sit here and get the stories I'm getting the phone calls that I'm getting, and fucking sleep at night because I can't, right? Like, it's just, my heart is so broken right now. But broken, not in a victim state, broken in the sense, it's broken because there's so much compassion inside there that I just want to get in and I want to bubble wrap all these children. And I just think that if, I invite everybody to come forward and help us put our heads together on how to do this. So in the meantime, right now, if we can I want to kind of compile list of MLAs and the government people that we can start sending emails and letters to and start expressing this kind of stuff. Because I got a reply back from the police this morning, and I mean, obviously they can't tell me what's going on. He said he's very much on top of things in my case. He's hearing what I'm saying. I just think that we need to tackle this from another direction besides the judicial and waiting for the police to finish their investigation. I talked to Caitlin Erickson yesterday, who is she's part of the Legacy Christian Academy situation that's happened there. She did yesterday, she had done her police report 496 days ago, and there's still no charges. These things take such lengthy time that in my mind and in my heart, I don't have 496 days to wait to try and bring some awareness of what's happening inside there. I'm not going to wait 496 days. I just refuse. Here's someone telling me, like, you got to wait. I'm like, no, I don't.
Well, that's why we're doing these podcasts.
Exactly.
That's why we're bringing this out and we're talking about this, and we're going to bring on more people. We're going to have more stories, more in-depth conversations. And we're going to bring these pedophiles to light.
Yeah. So, and I mean, everybody who's listening, if you've got ideas of how we can shed more light on this situation, that's what we want to hear. We want to hear that.
Cheryl,
go
ahead.
I was just saying, I welcome everybody to help me put together these lists of provincial MLAs across Canada.
Perfect.
I need help with that.
I'd be more than happy to help you.
Okay. Yeah.
And, you know, Cheryl, when you were talking about like a movement, and when you said that, I thought, you know, what's happened in the last year about these children. I just can't think of it right now. What is the name of it? Those children that were found dead in these graves at these schools,
residential schools. Yeah.
Residential schools.
Yeah, I thought, you know, this may be on a smaller case, but this is the same.
Mm-hmm.
This is absolutely the same.
It's just a different subject. It's just a different subject. Yeah.
But it's still like abuse, what those kids went through and everything.
It's religious trauma.
Totally. And, you know, we definitely will get there. I do believe we'll get there doing these podcasts and different things, but we definitely need to get it out there. It's gotta be big.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
We look forward to our next guest. I know we have a bunch lined up here. Okay. Thank you so much, Pam.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye.
To share your story or be a guest on the show, email info.getalife@proton.me.